السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. عن عبد الله ابن عباس رضي الله تعالى عنهما قال أخذ رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم ابنة له تقضي فاحتضنها فوضعها بين يديه فماتت وهي بين يديه وصاحت أيمن فقال يعني النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أتبكين عند رسول الله؟ فقالت ألست أراك تبكي؟ قال إني لست أبكي إنما هي رحمة إنما المؤمن بكل خير على كل حال إن نفسه تنزع من بين جنبيه وهو يحمد الله عز وجل. Abdullah ibn Abbas radiyallahu anhu narrates that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam picked up one of his daughters as she was nearing death. He held her in his blessed arms and then put her down in front of himself where she died. Ayman wept loudly, whereupon the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam asked her, "Do you weep in the presence of Rasulullah?" She replied, "Have I not seen you weep?" He replied, "I do not weep, yani like that. Rather, it is a rahmah. The believer enjoys a good state at all times and praises Allah Azza wa Jal, even while his soul is removed from his body." There's a bit of time-wise, it's not but there is a bit of with the hadith itself. So here it's أخذ رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم ابنة له تقضي. So this there's some discussion revolving around the hadith as far as who was this that was passing away. Was it one of the daughters of Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam? And that is not the opinion. There is the opinion that it was Umama, which was one of the granddaughters of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the daughter of Zainab radiyallahu ta'ala anha. But it seems that the correct opinion actually is that here the word for daughter has been because of the tar marbuta. So the hu damir, a pronoun, forgive me. So the harf, the letter that meant a pronoun, once it has the two dots on top of it, now then it becomes tar marbuta, which indicates the feminine. So it caused some confusion. And if you are aware of how the mushaf or the masahif used to be written, the Sahaba radiyallahu ta'ala anhum, their mushaf, their masahif, their copies of the Quran, a lot of times they didn't have dots. So this notion of having the dots and harakat and this is something which is that we're familiar with, but if you go back to the times of the first generations, this was not something that was found. These are things that took place over a period of time. So things like this were not uncommon. These things did happen. It is not something which is commonplace as far as like the mistakes, but in terms of now when you're talking about the actual commentary upon the hadith and historically the historical reference, who is this, who is it, who is the person that was in the arms of Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, regarding the actual content of the hadith itself, the matan and the I guess you could say the takeaway points from the hadith itself, it doesn't change that. But here, just letting you know that there is some discussion about who this was. So was it one of the sons, rather, of Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, since he did bury three of his sons. He buried Qasim, Abdullah, and also Ibrahim. So Ayman, also her name, the mother of Ayman, but her name was actually Baraka, and Baraka was the Abyssinian slave of his father Abdullah. So she was with Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam when he was born. She was the first one to actually hold him. And when his father Abdullah had passed away, then she was owned by the, actually inherited by Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, owned by the mother. And she was also with Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam when his mother passed away. She is the one who cared for him and got him to his grandfather. While he was with his grandfather Abdul Muttalib, she was also with him at that time, and she was with Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam even when he married Khadija. She didn't even marry herself until Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam and Khadija radiyallahu ta'ala anha, that they prodded her and they prompted her, like, no, you should get married also. So and then so there's a beautiful history that is there with Ayman. So this relationship, I bring that up because this this interaction that is taking place here is you have to understand the dynamics, some of the dynamics of the history of the relationship that already pre-exists here. And this is one of those things which is really, really important when you're talking about the hadith. Is that when you're reading a hadith, first of all, when you read a large body of hadith, when you step outside of just Bukhari, and now you're reading Bukhari and Muslim and Ibn Majah, and even outside of the Sahih Sitta, you're also reading, for instance, the Muwatta of Imam Malik, and you have Bayhaqi, and there's so many collections of a hadith. But the more well-read you are with these hadith, and these interactions, it's like you become privy to these interactions that take place between the Sahaba amongst themselves and also with Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You start to get a sense of their personalities, and as to a certain degree, again from that tertiary perspective, you get a certain understanding of the overall relationships that existed and their personalities and these types of things. And you actually begin to start to feel like, to a certain degree, again, as if you know them. I keep saying to a certain degree because I don't want to overstate it and say that, no, this is how you actually do get to know this. But it does give you a window into the past because of the well-preserved historical content. So here with Barakah, with Ayman, she was with Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam through all of everything, through all the difficulties, through all the hardships, everything. She was always there. She is one of those silent characters that you really don't hear so much about, but she was precious to Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he called her, he said that she is my mother. So after my mother Amina, she is my mother. And she was also one of the wet nurses of Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam. So this interaction that is taking place now, where Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and just as a quick note also, she was also with Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam at the time when he passed away. So she was the only person that was there with him from the very beginning, from the time that he was born until the time that he passed away. Radiyallahu ta'ala anha. So here we have this interaction that's taking place where somebody who was close to Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam has now passed away, like literally in front of him, was in his arms, and he lays whoever it happened to be, whether it was his daughter, it was his granddaughter, whether his son, he laid them down. And the actual word in Arabic here is wasahat Ayman. Sahat doesn't mean to cry. Sahat means, well, it means to cry, but it means to wail and to be very loud with the crying, to all the screaming and the moaning and the wailing, and right. So it's very dramatic, and this is what Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam is referring to. So he says, do you weep in the presence of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam? So he's saying, are you doing this in front of me? And she says, well, have I not seen you cry? And now Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam explains when tears are coming to his eyes and when he cries, and when he's dealing with bereavement, and when he's dealing with when he's dealing with loss, and when he himself is crying, that there is still a degree of control. There's no wailing and all of these things. But also he says that it is what? He says it is a rahmah. The believer enjoys a good state at all times. So he's saying that ala kulli hal, in every state, a believer is always in a good situation and is always praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, even while his soul is being removed from his body. So there is no case, there is no situation, there is no set of circumstances where the believer is now coming out of this state of hamd and shukr to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and is not enjoying the rahmah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is one of those things that we have to remember in our present set of circumstances, but also with Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that whether he's crying for his ummah or he's grieving over the loss of a family member or whatever the case may be, that his aqeedah, of course, is always still intact. It seems like, of course, it doesn't need to be stated, it doesn't need to be said, but we have to keep this in mind, and we do have to bring it out and bring it to the forefront so that we ourselves, that you and I, that we can be conscious of this, that as we're tackling life and the ups and downs of life, and we go through the good times and the bad times, that there should be this level balance, and we should remain constantly conscious of the rahmah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, even when the difficulties and the hardships come. But here, I also wanted to just quickly bring up, because this will be the last hadith that we're doing from the buka of Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the crying of and the weeping of Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that there are so many hadith in relation to our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and his weeping specifically in salah, and to the extent that his beard would be filled with the tears themselves, and he would weep for the ummah, he would weep for his ummah. There are instances where ayat of Quran are being recited to Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam from amongst the Sahaba, and Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam would stop them at a certain point, and he would be crying, or he would be witnesses crying. Abu Bakr Siddiq radiyallahu anhu. Well, just one second. So the question for you and I is, what are we missing out on? Do we cry in our salat? Do we cry when we're listening to the recitation of Quran? And if not, why not? It's not one of those things where we should nonchalantly just kind of like write it off. But we are his ummah, and we love him, and we profess to follow him. And crying is a very, weeping is a very, it's driven by something that is intense. It's not casual. We can smile casually, but when you're talking about weeping, weeping is usually driven by something which is very intense internally. So there's something that is happening with Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam that is bringing about this emotive response and causing him to weep. And we have to ask ourselves that, where do I have this in my life, and if I do, are the tears coming for the same reason? And if they're not coming, why aren't they coming? Because Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam saying is that it's a rahmah. So when we're weeping, it's a rahmah from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Every teardrop is a rahmah. There's another hadith. It's one of the two drops that are the most beloved to Allah. One drop of blood shed in the path of Allah, and the other one is now this teardrop that is shed in the fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, desirous of the rahmah and the maghfirah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and not wanting to be under the anger and the chastisement and the punishment of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So as we're moving closer and closer to Ramadan, which is the month where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's this treasure trove of access and opportunity to access the rahmah of Allah and the maghfirah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So as we're moving closer and closer to this, like, let's try to get our minds and our hearts right, so that we should be crying, and we should have a consciousness of this aspect also of the sunnah, of the life of Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that he was weeping. Why was he weeping? And I'm following him. He is my Nabi, he is my Rasul, and I represent him. What is it that he is understanding? What is it that is in our Islam that is bringing about this reaction from him, and why isn't it bringing out this reaction from me? Is there something that I don't know, that I don't understand? Is there something missing from my Islam, my practice of Islam? Are my sins getting in the way? Is there some contaminants or some corruption in my heart that is getting in the way? Some pollutants that are in the way? Is there something between me, getting in between my relationship with my Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and his Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam? And if so, how do we now actively engage in this process of removing those things, so that removing these barriers, so that we can access this rahmah that Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam mentions? And of course, the highest example of how to follow Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is always coming first and foremost in the form of Abu Bakr Siddiq radiyallahu ta'ala an, and then closely followed by Umar radiyallahu an. And Abu Bakr Siddiq radiyallahu an, he used to cry so profusely, even when even in Mecca, he would be in the courtyard of his home, and he would be reciting Quran. He'd be making salat and he'd be reciting Quran, and from the recitation and the emotion in the recitation and his crying, it was having an impact on people who were just around and hearing it and witnessing it, to the extent that the leaders of the Quraysh came to Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam and requested him that tell Abu Bakr, go in his home, make his salat in his home, read Quran in his home, because it's affecting our women and children. And as we know with the Quraysh from the other stories as well, when they said the women and children, but actually it was affecting them too. And this was one of the points that Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha, when Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam couldn't get up, he was too physically ill to get up and lead Fajr Salat before he passed away, and he told Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha to go and get Abu Bakr to lead the Salat. And she said she'd get Umar, and Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam told her, go get Abu Bakr. And Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha, about her own father, she says that he's always crying. Whenever he leads a salat, whenever he's reciting Quran, he's always crying, he's always weeping. We should get Umar. And Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam was very emphatic about this. Even Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha, she left, got Umar instead of her father, Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anhu. She brought Umar, and when Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam found out about this, he chastised her and told her, he said, what did you do? She said, I brought Umar. He said, no, I told you, go get Abu Bakr. So this status that Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anhu, that he has, and this attribute that we associate with him, that he was very quick, he would weep very easy, that this is an indication of rahmah from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is a rahmah that you and I should make every effort to access from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, especially as we're moving closer and closer to the month of Ramadan. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the tawfiq, the ability, and the understanding that goes along with it, that our tears should flow freely from our eyes privately with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala remove those barriers that stop us from enjoying the blessing of this rahmah, of the tears being able to flow in front of our Rabb, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgive us and have mercy on us. Allahumma gfiru lana wa lil mu'minina wal mu'minati wal muslimina wal muslimati al ahya'i minhum wal amwat, wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Jazakumullahu khairan jazaa. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.